An interesting point which the lecturer made in his presentation was that the matter of actualizing the vision of renewed hope cannot rest with the government agencies alone. Now, I want us to look at that, the fact that the citizens themselves who are being called upon to renew their hope and commitment to the new workings of a new administration, what is their role, since we're saying this cannot be a government affair all along?
It's now left for the government to have a clear communication channel to carry along the people. Particularly what is happening on ground has to be improved. You know, governance is a structural functional phenomenon within which those that are governing are using some sorts of institutional apparatus. The institutions are responding to the responses of the populace that they ought to serve. And if the people are carried along through adequate mobilization, advocacy, through practical issues that will make them to have a sense of belonging, I think the people will have a hope. Particularly His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, when he was the governor of Borno State, he had a sort of challenges that really make some people to even lose hope, particularly in terms of distractions and devastations to life and properties. Almost 75% of the local governments in Borno State were displaced, but the governor refused to leave in order to give a great hope to the people of the state. That is one, when he was a governor. Two, without relenting on the airports, any distraction on any infrastructural facility, he is on spot to ensure that it has been rebuilt. And then three, those that were already displaced, he ensured that he camped them at the internally displaced camp, redeployed the civil service at the state and the local government sectors, each at designated IDPs, for them to continue service in either the health or educational needs of the people. This created the hope. Even those that left Borno as an IDPs outside Borno State, on hearing what is going on because of the renewed hope, they went back to the state. If we are going to apply this type of method, being resilient, of delegating responsibilities, of solving problems, if the people are aware of their problems are being taken up by the leadership, they will naturally going to be mobilized in supporting the particular visions and aspirations of the federal government.
All right.
Thank you.
Dayo, let's come to you. And this energy that the mass of youths possess, how do you harness that when you talk about renewed hope and actualizing the vision through effective leadership, even at their levels?
Thank you. First, let me use the opportunity to highlight something. We're sitting on a time bomb, and the clock is ticking. 2 years ago, we had a massive protest by young people for the NSAS. The turnout was amazing, back to back for days. Recently, after the death of the young man Mohbad, there was a candle walk across the country. Young people turned out en masse. The reason why those critical numbers of young people come out a lot when there are those kind of protests and activities is because, like they say, an idle hand is the devil's workshop. A lot of our young people are at home without employment, without financing, without a form of support. And so our approach must be people first. Let me borrow the words of the president. The president said, Tobani, I'll say it in Yoruba, Tobani talo kan, Yoruba lo kan. Tobani Yoruba wo lo kan, Emi lo kan. In other words, when they say whose turn it is the turn of the Yorubas. When they say which Yoruba, it is my turn. Now, when they say whose turn it is, in the renewed hope agenda, it's the people. We must have a people-first approach. And then when we say which people is first, it's not the Hausa Fulani people, it's not the Igbo people or the Shekiris or the Yoruba, it's the young people, the youth of our nation, over 75% of our population. The energy is there, the passion is there, the capacity is there, the willingness is there. What is lacking is the engagement for them to be able to achieve economic prosperity. In the past, there have been many governmental interventions to ensure that we can support and invest in young people. But if we look at the matrix of monitoring and evaluation and look at the impact of that, lack of access to those opportunities is also very enormous. And so for us as Renewed Hope advocates, one of the things that this administration must, and I have no doubt that under the leadership of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and all our fantastic ministers who are in this hall, and our governors across the country, will prioritize is in ensuring that truly government will serve the needs of its people and provide access for young people to access investment. I'll give you an example. We have Bank of Industry funding. We have NISA funding. We have the 75 billion Nigerian Youth Investment Fund. But let's be real with ourselves and look at the percentage of young people who have been able to access this funding in the past. And so we must prioritize and ensure that more we unlock these opportunities for young people, in particular at the grassroots level, so that this prosperity can spread across the nation. You will have less restiveness, less conflict with young people, and more hope for young people in the administration. The reason, let me speak as a politician for once. I've spoken to a lot of our leadership of our party, that one of the reasons why we had a lot of youth challenge in the last election was because many young people feel disconnected with the government. But this is our time and opportunity as a government, and I have no doubt that the fantastic ministers and government leaders under the Bola Tinubu administration is prioritizing engagement of young people to be able to benefit and be part of the administration.
Let's look at the role of another critical segment of society in actualizing this vision of renewed hope. And if you sit back, and this now, if you sit back and look at the direction which this administration says it's pulling in, do you see a shift from the past? Do you see a deliberate step towards involving this segment? I'm talking about gender issues now, away from the usual tokenism which we always see. This for Ufuliata now.
Thank you very much. Gender, of course, is of topmost priority in the global agenda, especially with the number of commitments that Nigeria as a country has made at the international level. And for us as a country to have adopted the National Gender Policy in 2006, it means that we have a deliberate intention to fully integrate gender into our political process. I'm seeing a shift, but the shift is not enough. It's not enough in the sense that as a country, we had a benchmark that we set for ourselves in the National Gender Policy, which is even far more about the global benchmark, And last year, 2022, we also had a court injunction speaking to the need for the government to respect its own gender policy, by ensuring that at least at the minimum, there is 35% inclusion of women and men in all political appointed positions, not just at the federal government level, but starting from the local government level. So the shift is seen and the political commitment is seen, but we would need to see it translate more into action in terms of the number of political appointees and the extent to which there's a gender balance. And of course, we know also as a nation, having committed to the UN Resolution 1325, that women are critical in peace-building processes. And this tells us a lot, with the need to completely move away from some of the challenges we have with security in our country. So gender is critical, gender is very important, but at this point, we need some deliberate efforts, such as an affirmative action, to ensure that this happens. And of course, in a nation-building process, we cannot underestimate the contribution of women and the role they play, in governance. And I would like to say that it's very important to put in place sustainable actions that can enable the process, that can make it more convenient for women, to enjoy, and men alike, to enjoy the good dividend of democracy. And I want to give an example. Primary health care is very important, it's critical, but the state at which our primary health care centers are today are not the best. And we know that women, one of their first places of call, especially in the communities, will be to go to primary health care centers to take care of their health. So I'm also using this platform, to say that to further affirm that shift, we need to take care of some of the basic things, that affect and impact on the lives of women. And also looking at infrastructure, this is critical. If I take road, for example, it has a lot of economic impact on how we have access to farm produce from the deeper communities, where women and men alike need to bring out some of those farm produce that they have invested a lot in, over the years, especially when it's the time of harvest. And like has been said, Nigeria is a very rich country in terms of agricultural produce. We need to invest, to make it more accessible and to make it very interesting to people. I was with a group of other West African colleagues, some 3 weeks back on a pre-election visit to Liberia. And we were doing analysis. And because Nigeria now has, a very strong hold on its production of rice, it was very obvious that to buy a bag of rice in Nigeria was reasonable in price than you could find in Ghana, for example. I know we were discussing about governance and government, and some of my colleagues from the West African sub-region said that please just tell your country, your President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, to just make our country part of Nigeria, because it seems you people are enjoying more than us. I said, yes, we're not there yet, but we're trying our best. These are colleagues who are professionals. And from that visit also, my joy was also increased by the fact that some of the state actors, non-state actors that we also met at different fora, were listing some of those kind of support that they were expecting from Nigeria as a country, to a fellow country in the West African sub-region. This means that Nigeria is not a failed state. We're not where we want to be, but there is need to put in more deliberate actions to achieve what we need to achieve. And in doing this, women cannot be left behind. Women need to be fully included in actualizing the renewed hope of the current government. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much. And with just about 10 minutes to go, I'd like us to return to the main plank of the lecture. And the lecturer talked about coordination, and he's talked about relations amongst key agencies of government, the bureaucracy, for instance. As we round off, let me start with you. How quickly should the coordination be amongst the agencies of government? How quickly should that be if we are to keep this drive for renewed hope alive? Yes.
Thank you. The time is now. We don't have much time because, of course, government is transitional, but the country, the people remain. So the coordination should start now. And I'm also using this platform to say that one key critical area is to have the people on the page of the government. And that's through a real reorientation. The National Orientation Agency should be at work to ensure that there is adequate coordination in the kind of thinking and rethinking process of Nigerians as a people. We need to have that value in us, that to be a first-class Nigerian citizen is not comparable to a second-class citizen where people jackpot or where people go to today. I'd rather be a first-class citizen of Nigeria rather than be a secondary citizen. So the time is now.
All right, thank you. Well, I'd like you to look at that as well, but have at the back of your mind how you can discourage the concept of juicy postings. The lecturer alluded to that.
Thank you. Let me use the opportunity first to thank the President and the Vice President for an increased level of youth inclusion in this administration. We've never had it this good. There have been so much young people, phenomenal young people even from the grassroots who've been carried along, let me use that word, in the administration. Mr. Vice President, sir, thank you for Ningi, thank you for Amshi, thank you for all of the young people on your team. And of course, Mr. President, thank you for Atika, thank you for Moremi, thank you for all the fantastic young people. Chief of Staff, we're very grateful for upping youth inclusion in this administration. We've never seen it this way before in Nigeria. And of course, we want more, we expect more. There's still thousands of young people out there who work for the party and who have competence and capacity and who are waiting for a platform to serve their fatherland and their motherland, whichever one it is for them. I think I see Shagun Dada there. Well, you know, Aziz, there's a lot of young people there. Now, about when do we start? We need to start as far back as yesterday. This is the time to hit the ground running. And see, Angusiro, you were talking about the issue of GC ministry. It goes back to my first point. When the purpose for something is not known, abuse is inevitable. If you don't understand that you're not here because you've come to get a good life or a reward, but it's about people first. You understand that Nigerians are waiting, Nigerians are anxious, we are promised a lot during the election, and they want to see performance. And so every day they're waiting to see something good from all our ministries and all our agencies. But also the reality is that the ministers, their success depends on the effectiveness of the public servant and the civil servant under our beautiful head of service, Mrs. Esau. And so all of us, it's not just about the cabinet ministers themselves, but even the career civil servant need to wake up that it's not business as usual, and we have a bomb ticking. We have a responsibility to show people that we know where we are taking them to. They say, follow who know road. If we can't show people that we, on time, that we know where we're taking them to, and they're anxious and saying, what's going on, they will lose confidence, like you said. But when they see that you are showing capacity, you're showing direction, it is easy for them to calm down, knowing that the man of the wheel. What we have so far today is the goodwill of the president. They know that they can trust him. We know that we believe in him. We know that he knows what to do. We must ensure that we are proactive so that we don't exhaust or waste the goodwill that Nigerians have in the president.
Thank you, Prof. And on to you, Prof, in rounding off. I'd like you to quickly look at how you can, in promoting effective development through effective leadership. I'd like you to look at the role from the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, to the Head of Service, to the Chief of Staff, pitched against the bureaucracy, the technocrats, and those in office. How do you de-escalate what would seem like a struggle for supremacy?
That's great. It depends on the Chief Executive to clearly delineate their boundaries in terms of jurisdiction and authority. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation is the most senior, within which he coordinates and oversees all the ministries through the permanent secretaries. The Chief of Staff to the President is the Principal Secretary, the gatekeeper to the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. That is the Chief of Staff to the President and Commander-in-Chief. Then the Head of Service is the Chief Civil Servant. The SSG may be a political appointment, but the Head of Service is a technocrat like the permanent secretaries and other directors. They are the nerve center of implementing government policies. They know the secret of the government. And their ability to follow through with the Head of Service in liaison with the Secretary to the State Government must be delineated, monitored, and supervised to ensure effective flow and communication. And then it now goes to the Chief of Staff, to the President, who serve as a custodian of all the correspondences that is going into the presidency. Now there are certain instances within which some of the proposals that will be written by some of the technocrats may even sideline the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Sometimes the head of civil service may not even be aware of the correspondences between the head of state and some ministries. And it's only the the chief of staff to the president that may be aware, because the letters must go through his ministry, through his office before it reach the head of state. So the president should exercise and demonstrate leadership ability to ensure that the delegative responsibilities are effectively respected, that each for its responsibility and each for its jurisdiction and authority. Without that, if the president just leave it as it is, without delineating the functions and roles of these three principal officers, the permanent secretaries then will now run to any of the offices, depending on the one that is on the book, what you call green book, or the most favored based on their perception. So all in all, what I am saying is, whether it is the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the Chief of Staff to the President, or the Head of Civil Service, it depends on their relationship with the President based on the perception of the principal officers that make them to act. But the President, based on the missions and the visions that I have seen, I think he is capable of carrying along through each of the ministries, performing relative to the areas of their jurisdiction and function. And may I seize that opportunity to say that we are only hammering on the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have to take into cognizance the subunit that make up the Federal Republic of Nigeria. A success of the Ministry of Agriculture depends on the ability of Yobe, Adamawa, Taraba, Borno, Sokoto, Zamfara Ministry of Agriculture to align with. And then the successes of the state ministries also depend on the successes of the departments of agriculture in the respective local governments. So when you are talking about coordination, vertically, you just don't have to neglect the horizontal coordination between the tiers and the arms of the government. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And it is on that note we round off this segment of the symposium. I'd like you to once again appreciate the discussants. Mufuliat Fijabi, thank you. Dayo Israel, thank you, always a delight. And Professor Ibrahim Umara, thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, that concludes this segment of today's program. And at this point, let me call on my colleague, Eugenia. Right, there you are. Right, it swings back to you now. Thank you.
Your Excellency, sir, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our excellent panelists. A round of applause for them again.